Revenge with Karen.
They say you never remember the paperwork that saves your ass, just the one that ruins your career. Which is funny, because I've written both, sometimes on the same day. Anyway, I knew Rixton Biologics was screwed the moment the founder pulled me aside during his retirement lunch, handed me a lukewarm gin martini, and said, "You kept the wheels from flying off, Emily." Even when no one noticed, he patted my shoulder like I was a houseplant he forgot to water. I smiled, said thank you, but inside, that sentence wrapped around my spine like ice. Because that's what I'd been doing for 7 years, keeping everything from flying off. Regulatory filings, vendor certifications, internal audits, clinical trial licensing. The kinds of details that, when done right, make people think the job's easy. Invisible work. If you've ever juggled FDA submission deadlines, while a 28-year-old with a TikTok startup mindset renames your compliance folders to spice it up, then yes, we're soulmates. I built that entire damn compliance backbone, from the first 483 warning letter the company ever got, to the moment we were finally allowed to run our own investigational trials without babysitting from a third-party monitor. I built the protocols, the license chain, and most importantly, held the cryptographic key that certified every official transaction. Literally, a black dongle the size of a chapstick tube that made or broke entire pharmaceutical divisions. You lose it or assign it improperly, and your whole clinical program goes dark. Guess who always knew where it was? But I didn't wear heels, didn't network at happy hours, never learned how to smile when an executive's nephew told me compliance is just glorified paperwork. I stayed in the background, not because I was meek, because I was efficient. I documented things no one asked me to. I quietly fixed things people didn't know they broke. I scheduled annual updates the company wasn't even legally required to perform yet, and that made me a threat. When the founder left, it wasn't long before the nepotism tsunami hit. Enter Leela, blonde, loud, terrifyingly confident in her ignorance, and freshly titled VP of Operations. Her resume was 4 bullet points and a hyphenated last name. Her first act as VP, turning our documentation repository into a digital transformation hub and onboarding a consultancy that charged $420 an hour to delete things. Let that sink in. She scheduled alignment huddles at 7:45 a.m. or sunglasses inside, and once asked if she could just slack the FDA. I wish I were joking. She brought in a private barista for the exec floor, but refused to approve replacement toner for the second floor printers. And then she started pushing the culture reset. Suddenly, longtime employees were legacy personnel. Teams were flatter. Titles dissolved. Middle management vanished. And I, the woman who literally held the company's federal identity key, was informed in a chirpy HR email that my role was evolving into external support only. If you've made it this far, I'll say this real quick. Do me a favor and hit that follow or subscribe button and maybe throw a like on this. 95% of folks don't, and honestly, it keeps the whole story engine running. Helps the team survive Leela-level chaos without quitting. All right, back to it. At first, I thought maybe I'd finally get some rest. Maybe I'd teach yoga to retirees or open a bookstore that only sold true crime. I offered to train someone on the compliance systems. Walked into her office with a full transfer packet I'd spent 3 weekends prepping. You know what she said? That's not your concern anymore. Didn't even look up from her phone. I was told legal would figure it out. The same legal that once misspelled penalty in a federal filing and tried to fax a digital signature. I had a choice. Leave gracefully, like some silent office ghost, or finish this chapter like I lived the rest of them, quietly, meticulously, and with a paper trail that would outlive the rats trying to scurry over it. Because here's the thing about being invisible. It lets you walk right past every red flag without anyone stopping you. And when Leela sent that message, "Need my oat milk latte," you're not technically off payroll until 5, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just opened the bottom drawer of my cabinet and looked at the little black dongle, still warm in its foam-lined case. No one had claimed it. No one even asked. So I took it home. Leela breezed into her new title like it was a Coachella wristband. Day 1 as VP of Operations, and she was already redecorating the executive suite, said the furniture gave her colonial sadness. Replaced the conference room table with a glossy slab of reclaimed wood that looked like it belonged in a Michelin star brunch joint, not a biotech company on federal watch lists. No one said anything, of course, because her last name bought silence. And in those first few weeks, the silence spread like mildew. The first reorg memo was titled Culture Refresh, Rixton 3.0. Cute, right? Unless you were in finance, HR, facilities, or, guess who, regulatory compliance. Whole departments were decentralized. Long-tenured managers disappeared in closed-door sunsetting conversations. I sat through meetings where she used the phrase disruptive velocity while talking about deleting our SOP archive. She called our compliance servers legacy clutter and wanted to migrate everything to some shiny platform her college roommate worked at. I asked what kind of FDA validation the new platform had. Response: it's encrypted and cloud native, will be fine. Fine, the way Chernobyl was fine. She didn't know what a 21 CFR Part 11 audit was. She thought GXP was a gym pass. She signed vendor contracts without cross-checking their license numbers. She asked legal to rewrite our clinical partner NDA to be less stiff. And yet, somehow, I was the one they decided to phase out. I wasn't even called into an office. I got a ping from HR, of those chirpy little Slack bots saying, "Hey there, can we chat for 5?" Like I was being invited to coffee and not gently shoved off a compliance cliff. The HR rep had the same wide-eyed look people get when they break up with someone who still pays half the rent. "We just want to be transparent," she said. "Your role is evolving. We're looking at outside partners to handle compliance in a more agile way. You've been invaluable, of course." Invaluable. Word that means please leave your keycard and don't sue us. I asked if they had someone lined up to take over federal license custody. That's not a job you just hand off like a bagel order. It's audited, federally registered, and comes with criminal liability if it's mishandled. Her smile didn't falter. "Legal will take care of that. You don't need to worry about it. That's not your concern anymore." I asked if they wanted documentation. A walkthrough, transition plan. Hell, a phone call with the FDA liaisons I'd worked with for 5 years. She just repeated it, "Not your concern." At that moment, I realized something dangerous. They weren't just ignoring me. They had no idea what they were doing. None. They assumed someone somewhere would figure it out. That the system I built was like a microwave, push buttons, food gets hot. Don't worry about what happens inside. Ila strutted into meetings with a MacBook she never opened and a venti iced drink that cost more than my lunch. She started inviting her friends to observe internal audits. One of them asked if we could rebrand the IRB as something more marketable. Another said we should gamify compliance trainings. I sat through every meeting like a ghost, watching her own funeral. Then one day, I logged into the federal compliance portal, checked the status of the license, saw something I couldn't believe. It still listed me as the active custodian. No updates, no new signatures, no official transfer filed. Despite everything, despite the Slackbots and the sunset chats and the oat milk vanity, no one had taken the one, simple, legally required step to reassign the company's most important regulatory asset. That little black dongle in my drawer, still legally bound to me. I stared at the screen. My name, glowing quietly in the Federal Registry, like a middle finger made of light. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, because I knew gravity doesn't care who's holding the balloon. Let go and it falls. And Leela, she was already tugging at the string with both hands. I almost let it go. After that HR call, I drove home in silence. No music, no podcast, just the low hum of my engine and the kind of rage that doesn't scream, it hisses. I've been through layoffs before. I've watched entire floors cleared out by buzzwords and budget cuts. I've eaten sheet cake in conference rooms while execs gave farewell speeches about next chapters and exciting new journeys. I know the game. You swallow the insult, box up your mug, maybe grab a stapler for spite, and vanish before your dignity hits the floor. I told myself, walk away. Don't look back. Let Leela and her kombucha cult drown in the Google Docs they can't even version control. I even started drafting an email, something graceful, professional. I'd attached a clean summary of active federal filings, pending trial reviews, contact info for our FDA point of contact, and a step-by-step process for transferring the license dongle, including screenshots. Labeled folders, links to federal protocol. It was, if I may say so, idiot-proof, and it sat untouched in my drafts folder for 3 days. Not because I forgot to send it, because no one requested it. Not HR, not legal, not even Leela. Instead, I got this gem, need my oat milk latte, You're not technically off payroll until 5. That was the whole message. No greeting, no punctuation, just that smug little winky face blinking at me like it had the moral high ground. I stared at it, blinked once, then twice. Let me paint the scene for you. I was sitting in my cubicle, the same one I'd occupied for 7 years, the same one where I'd built our internal auditing framework from scratch, migrated 3 clinical trial systems across state lines, and corrected the same vendor's sloppy documentation 13 times in 1 quarter. I was being asked to fetch coffee, because I hadn't clocked out yet, because she could. The old me would have laughed it off, sent a passive-aggressive gif and gone to Starbucks, seething but compliant. But that day, that exact moment, something shifted. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was colder, cleaner, a click behind the eyes like flipping a breaker. I opened the drawer. There it was, the dongle, still in its foam cradle like a goddamn relic. The funny part is, I'd spent weeks trying to do the right thing. I'd emailed legal twice about the reassignment protocol, asked to loop in the person who'd replace me, offered to walk them through the custody process live, even offered to record a video tutorial. They ghosted me, never responded. One paralegal finally replied with thanks, we'll handle it from here. That was 2 months ago. They never filed the change, never touched the key. So technically, legally, I still held the company's federal compliance identity. I was the only person authorized to sign off on trial data, submit certifications, and verify cross-border medical agreements. And that little plastic dongle in my drawer, it wasn't a trinket, it was the company's spine. Leela didn't know that, but she was about to. I closed the drawer, didn't slam it. Just slowly, deliberately let it click shut. Then I opened her message again. Typed 1 word, sure, hit send, and in that moment I made a decision. Not to fight, not yet, but to stop cleaning up their mess. Let gravity do its thing. Let the silence they loved so much finally echo. Because when someone builds their empire on forgetting the details, it only takes one forgotten chain of custody to make the whole thing implode. And I just decided I wasn't going to stop it. My last day didn't start with fireworks. It started with a lukewarm shower and the same beige slacks I'd worn the day I onboarded. I packed my office plants into a cardboard filing box, pruned the dying leaves off my pothos, and watered it with the last drops of burnt coffee from my travel mug. It felt like a funeral, just without the casseroles. I parked in my usual spot, third from the end, the one nobody else liked because it was under the scraggly tree that shed sap every spring. I liked it. Meant no one parked next to me. Fewer door dings, fewer conversations. Walking in felt wrong, not sad, just wrong, like I was a ghost in my own skin. The front desk had a bowl of mints that hadn't been refilled in months. The receptionist didn't look up. I guess when you're marked for deletion, the system starts erasing you early. The office buzzed with the usual Friday nonsense. Someone microwaving salmon at 9:30 a.m. People arguing over who booked Conference B, Leela laughing too loud about something that probably involved hashtags and white wine. I passed IT. They didn't even glance up. Good. In my tote was a padded envelope with my ID badge, security keycard, and desk drawer keys. I'd labeled it like I was shipping off a kidney. HR loved labels, but what wasn't in the envelope was the dongle. That was in my coat pocket, wrapped in a microfiber cloth. Silent, changed, unnoticed. The official procedure per my own policy was to log the reassignment through the federal compliance portal, submit a notarized transfer letter, and update chain of custody credentials through 3 internal databases and a mirrored external registry. None of that had happened, because no one had asked, not once. I'd given them every chance. I'd tried, I really had, but they were too busy renaming departments and hosting vision boarding luncheons. Now, the company's entire compliance infrastructure rested inside a 1-ounce device in my coat, and they didn't even know it. It was 11:57 a.m. when I walked into the HR suite. Leela was standing by the glass wall, doing an exaggerated lean against the window like she was being photographed for a profile piece no one would ever read. She had sunglasses on her head. Indoors, again. Leaving so soon, she said without turning around. Held up the padded envelope. Badge, keys, all yours. She gave me a dismissive smile. Cool, just drop it on the table. You'll get your exit survey in an email, no handshake, no eye contact, that was fine. I wasn't here for gratitude, I was here for the threshold. She turned to leave but stopped halfway and said, oh, and can you grab that NDA template from your shared folder before you go? We're cleaning house. Her voice had that helium float to it. I nodded, smiled, then calmly I walked back to my desk. I took one last look around. The desk I'd sat at through 3 fiscal years, 2 mergers, a false alarm evacuation, and 1 mouse infestation. I logged out, closed my laptop, slid it into its case. Then I stood, dongle in pocket, no fanfare, no announcement. But in that moment, I felt taller, not out of pride, out of clarity. You see, up until that point, I'd played the game, tried to be helpful, tried to make sure they wouldn't screw it up too badly, tried to hand off the torch without burning down the house. But they didn't want the torch. They wanted the light without the fire. And now they were going to learn the difference. I walked past Leela's desk again on my way out. She was mid-giggle, bragging to someone about how she streamlined compliance into a one-click solution. I paused, not long, just enough to watch her bask in the lie. Then I left, through the turnstile, out the door, into the cool November air. The dongle pressed lightly against my leg, still registered, still active, still entirely mine. And for the first time since they'd started pushing me out, I felt nothing. Not rage, not bitterness. Just a clean, cold line drawn in the sand. They wouldn't see it today, not tomorrow, but soon they would. And when they did, I wouldn't be anywhere near the fallout. They say the devil's in the details. At Rixton Biologics, Devil wore oversized sunglasses and called herself a Vibes First leader. In the weeks after I left, the company barreled ahead like a drunk driver in a Tesla autopilot fantasy. Leela, now fully unleashed, ran the place like her personal sandbox. One day she was onboarding an innovation Sherpa from Instagram. The next, she was filming a walkthrough of the lab floor for something called Found Her, a series she was pitching to women in leadership podcasts that never responded. I heard most of it through the grapevine. See, when you quietly save people from regulatory death for 7 years, you make allies. Quiet ones. Accountants who'd seen too many forced write-offs. Lab managers who knew what a misfiled batch could do to a trial timeline. An IT guy named Malik who once spent 3 weekends rebuilding our submission server after someone tried to install Minecraft on it. People like that don't forget who saved their ass when legal didn't see the urgency. So I got updates. Not gossip. Signals. Like how legal was too buried in prepping documents for new joint venture in Germany to even check the compliance chain for ongoing trials. Or how Leela approved a full migration of our trial data to a shiny new cloud platform with beautiful fonts and customizable emojis, without a single validation test. How she signed off on 3 foreign site trials with paperwork still in English only. The kind of thing that gets your entire pipeline flagged. I didn't gloat, not yet, but it was like watching a slow leak under a kitchen sink. You don't root for the flood, but you sure as hell notice when the floor starts warping. The real turning point came 3 weeks after I left. Malik forwarded me a photo. No subject line, no message, just a screenshot. It was a PDF, a scanned signature page. Leela's, with a loopy, aggressive scribble under a job title. Acting license custodian. I stared at it. Then I laughed, out loud, alone. It wasn't even a bitter laugh, it was light, freeing, because there it was, the final, glorious screw-up. She had signed documents, filed them, and sent them upstream to international partners under a title she had no legal authority to claim. To the Federal Registry, I was still the only registered custodian, which meant every signature she'd made in that capacity wasn't just invalid, it was potentially criminal. And the best part, she had no idea, because when I'd offered to train someone on the reassignment process, HR had said, "That's not your concern anymore," so I didn't make it my concern. I simply watched. Leela paraded around on social media, captioning filtered photos from our sterile hallway with lines like "running the future." One disruptor at a time, nail medium light sparkles the board, I assumed, was either too drunk on expansion dreams or too afraid to question the golden girl. Legal was drowning in merger clauses. HR had moved on to their next hatchet job, realignment initiative. And IT, still rebooting every Wednesday because the shiny new system didn't play nice with the actual federal submission tools. But me, I was drinking good coffee, stretching in the mornings, sleeping through the night for the first time in a decade. Bittersweet calm, they call it. The kind that comes after you've tried everything, the warnings, the documentation, the Slack pings nobody answered. Finally realized that the only thing left to do is let the match fall and walk away before anyone notices the smoke. The moment I saw Leela's fake title under that signature, I closed my laptop and smiled. Not wide, not wicked, just enough. because gravity had been pulling this whole time, and now her hands were full of the wrong thing, and no one, not a single soul, had double-checked what she dropped. The meeting was supposed to be at 11 o'clock a.m. sharp. Cursey wrap-up, I called it in the calendar invite. Just enough formality to make it seem like I was doing them a favor. The title made HR twitch in their ergonomic chairs. They didn't like anything with wrap-up unless it came with pre-approved talking points and a Google form. I'd sent it out 5 days in advance. CC'd everyone. Leela, HR, legal, even Malik from IT, who replied with a single good luck gif of someone waving a white flag. Nobody replied to confirm. Nobody replied to decline. Just silence. Still, I dressed for it like it was a deposition. Navy slacks, white shirt, hair back. The kind of outfit that made people assume you're holding something important even if all you've got is a stapler. Except this time, I wasn't holding a stapler. I had the dongle. It sat in a velvet pouch in my tote bag, cushioned between a copy of my exit paperwork and a chocolate protein bar I didn't plan to eat. 11:03, empty room. 11:06, still empty. I opened my laptop and logged into the Federal Registry again just to make sure. There it was, my name still glowing on the custodian chain. 7 years of documented access, filings, certifications. The full lineage of a compliance program built from scratch and duct tape. And no reassignment, not even a pending one, not even a whisper of process. I closed the laptop, waited. 11:15. Leela still hadn't appeared, but I could hear her voice floating in from the bullpen like a game show host who forgot her mic was still on. I stepped out of the meeting room. She was leaning on a desk, holding court with someone from marketing, laughing about an influencer campaign that used the phrase pharmachic without irony. She spotted me, smiled with that performative brightness that executives use when they don't remember your last name. Then, with 2 fingers raised like a peace sign, she said, "Oh, hey, Em," grabbed my coffee like this was a Starbucks run. Like I wasn't still holding the company's spine in my bag. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just walked over, slow, purposeful, pulled out the pouch, opened it. The velvet caught the light, soft, expensive, serious. And then I reached in, took out the dongle. Looked so harmless, like something you'd win from a claw machine. But inside that plastic shell was the cryptographic heartbeat of every clinical trial Rixton had touched in the last 5 years. I held it in my palm, extended it toward her. She looked at it like I was handing her a fidget toy. "What's this?" "The key," I said. "You asked me to hand things off." She shrugged and took it without thinking, dropping it onto her desk like a chapstick. She turned back to marketing and said something about needing edgier colors for our regulatory slides. And just like that, it happened. Chain of custody broken, no witness, no paperwork, no formal reassignment, just a clueless executive accepting a compliance artifact without authorization, in full view of a bullpen that thought it was a flash drive. I turned and walked away. Didn't explain, didn't clarify, didn't remind her that the moment her fingers closed around that dongle, she became the functional license custodian in the eyes of anyone watching. And in the absence of a formal transfer, that's a breach, a real one. The kind that makes government databases flag your filings. The kind that makes watchdogs pull your audit trail. The kind that turns acting license custodian into a very bad joke, especially when your name isn't listed anywhere it should be. Headed back toward the exit, Malik caught my eye from the IT row. Raised an eyebrow. I just nodded, calm, precise, let it land. Because some bombs don't tick, they hum. The thing about ticking time bombs is they're boring until they're not. It was 3 hours later when the hum turned to sirens. I was already home, feet up, blanket across my lap, watching reruns of some British crime drama where everyone solves murders using eyebrow twitches and tea metaphors. My phone was on silent. My laptop was closed. My inbox, empty by choice. But somewhere back at Rixton Biologics, the reckoning had begun. The first red flag was probably procedural. Maybe a failed signature verification on a trial certification upload. Or maybe the FDA's automated system bounced back an audit file because the attached license credentials didn't match the active custodian of record. Whatever it was, it hit legal like a Molotov cocktail through a stained glass window. I got the play-by-play later from Malik, who saw the whole thing unfold from the IT row. It started with a paralegal named Jenna casually checking the day's trial submission logs. Just routine due diligence. A harmless checkbox. And then she saw it. The signature on the submission, Leela's. But the registered license custodian, per the federal database, me. Still me. 7 weeks post-resignation. Jenna blinked, frowned, checked again. Same result. She flagged a manager. The manager flagged in-house counsel. Then someone pulled Leela into a side room, and that's where things went full Chernobyl. Leela, apparently unaware that the walls had ears and that Malik had installed the new IT cams himself, walked in holding the dongle between her thumb and forefinger like it was a dead beetle. I thought it was just, like, symbolic or something, she said. Emily literally handed it to me. Someone in legal, probably the last guy who knew how federal custody worked, went white. Tell me that's a joke, he muttered. She shrugged. Why? What even is this thing? Junior counsel, God bless his caffeinated heart, tried to salvage it. Did you sign anything, submit anything with that credential? Yes, she said, a few filings and a partnership agreement. The lawyer swore. Loud. Like echo across the bullpen loud. One of them pulled up the federal registry again. Still listed. Emily M. Halbrook, active license custodian. 0 updates. 0 pending reassignments, which meant every document Leela signed using that dongle was unauthorized. Worse, fraudulent. Even worse, each submission carried a timestamp tied to a license she did not legally own. Who told her she could hold the license? Someone asked. No one had an answer, because no one had told her anything. Just let it happen. Let her waive off process. Let her skip signatures. Let her make executive decisions like signing on behalf of a federal custodian without any training, clearance, or paper trail. And now the FDA would be notified. The compliance portal flagged the breach automatically. All current trials would be paused pending internal investigation. Worst case scenario, every submission she touched could be invalidated, which meant redoing months, maybe years of clinical work. Funding would freeze. Investor confidence would nosedive. Partners would be notified. And the real kicker, they couldn't even blame me, because I'd tried, I'd offered. I had the emails. I had the documents. Hell, I had the velvet pouch. Meanwhile, Malik, ever the helpful tech, leaned back in his chair and whispered to no one in particular, should have checked the chain of custody before she played hot potato with a government artifact. The time the board got wind, the building was metaphorically on fire. Emergency Zooms, legal reviews, HR panic, PR blackout. Leela, she locked herself in the glass conference room, probably Googling how to spell chain of custody without looking panicked. But it was too late. The dongle wasn't just a device. It was a mirror. And when they finally looked into it, all they saw was their own negligence, staring back in high definition. Me. I sipped tea. Not metaphorical tea. Actual tea, with honey. Vindication tastes like chamomile and blood pressure medication. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you know the fire isn't yours to put out anymore. The morning after the breach detonated, I walked into the building one last time, not because I had to, but because I wanted to see it. The quiet before the collapse. The calm before the floodlights and subpoenas. The lobby was unusually tense. Security guards whispering into radios. A receptionist trying to smile, but blinking like someone had slipped KN into her contacts. My final paperwork was tucked in a manila folder under my arm. Severance forms, NDA compliance, ironically, health benefit rollover instructions. All standard, all printed neatly, all useless now. Leela had triggered the kind of audit spiral that doesn't end with a stern email, ends with external investigators combing through metadata and timestamps, and board members asking, very quietly, if someone can make this go away. As I crossed the floor, the bullpen was in shambles. Legal had taken over half the conference rooms. The door to HR was shut, blinds down, which was unusual because they loved their open-door transparency. Malik passed me near the elevators. He looked up, nodded. Then he smiled. Nice day for an internal review, he said. Best weather we've had all quarter, I replied. We both kept walking. I made my way to the HR suite and dropped the manila folder on the admin's desk with all the grace of a librarian shelving a long overdue return. No one was there. Just silence, broken faintly by the hum of a panicked Zoom call in the next room. Someone was saying, no, I don't think she even read the protocol before the door closed. I walked out slowly, taking it all in, the glass, the desks, the scent of burnt K-cups and expensive mistakes. At the front desk, the receptionist glanced up. Hi, Emily, leaving for good today? She asked, trying to smile like she hadn't just watched the company lose its entire regulatory footing in real time. I nodded. Yeah, heading out. She hesitated. They've been trying to call you upstairs. I figured, I said. Should I tell them anything? I thought for a moment. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and fired off a single line to the IT group address. Subject, access body. You'll want to change my access levels or not. Up to you. No signature. No emoji. No threats, just facts. I smiled at the receptionist, waved, and stepped outside. The autumn air hit me like a clean sheet. Crisp, cold, honest. The kind of weather you can breathe in without choking. Behind me, the building stood tall, all glass and steel and arrogance. But inside, systems were blinking red. Contracts were in limbo, trials were frozen, and all because someone thought she could skip the handoff, all because I didn't stop her. I didn't have to sabotage anything. I didn't leak. I didn't scream. I didn't go scorched earth. I simply followed the process. And when they ignored it, I let them own the consequences. The breach wasn't mine, it was theirs. A gift, wrapped in velvet, passed across a desk by a woman who used to fetch her own coffee. And as I walked away, the weight in my pocket was gone. No dongle, no guilt, no more invisible labor. Just freedom and silence. Exactly the way I planned it. The emails started pinging federal inboxes before sunrise. Automated compliance flags, audit alerts, digital red banners that flash when a license chain doesn't match its transaction history. It didn't take long for the watchdogs to bite. By 9 a.m., Rixton Biologics had been placed under temporary regulatory suspension. Every clinical trial, every test site, every open partner pipeline, frozen. Not paused, frozen. As in, no new data, no filings, no movement of product across borders. Not until a full audit could be completed and the breach resolved. That meant millions in limbo. Agreements null, timelines shattered. By noon, the investors began pulling out, quietly at first. A meeting canceled, a wire paused. But then the dam broke, calls to legal, questions from insurance underwriters, just checking emails from partners whose NDAs were suddenly invalidated because the wrong person signed them. The company's Series D raise, dead in the water. The expansion deal with the German lab collapsed like a cheap folding chair. Compliance wasn't just a line item anymore. It was the whole dam board. By 3 p.m., boardroom was packed. Emergency session. Legal, compliance. What was left of it? HR trying not to look like they'd pushed the first domino. Leela was there too, dressed like nothing was wrong, except her hair was frizzy from pacing, and her nails were chewed down to the quick. The founder dialed in from London, back early from his post-retirement sabbatical. The man who once built a company off the back of a half-patented enzyme and a half-dozen favors from MIT friends gave him the update, the full story. How his daughter, armed with zero credentials and even less curiosity, had accepted the company's compliance artifact from a departing employee without a signed reassignment, witness transfer, or single line of documented protocol. How she had used that artifact to sign binding documents in multiple jurisdictions. How that single act had invalidated months, if not years, of clinical work. How the license was never officially transferred. Not once, not even attempted. There was silence on the line. Then, you let my daughter accept a compliance key, the founder said slowly, like each word was poison on his tongue without due process. Nobody answered. Legal looked at their shoes. HR flipped a pen in their lap like it held the answer. Someone's stomach audibly growled and was met with daggers. Then came the final line. Quiet. Razor-edged. You asked her for coffee. Muttered. She gave you a catastrophe. Click. Call ended. And just like that, the reckoning was fully born. By end of day, Leela's internal accounts were locked. Her badge deactivated. A voluntary leave of absence announced in a company-wide memo written in Comic Sans levels of denial. Legal launched a full-blown remediation protocol. Compliance consultants flooded the building. Partners demanded escrow assurances. PR drafted 3 different versions of a statement no one would approve. It was, to put it mildly, carnage. Meanwhile, I was on my back porch, feet up, wine glass sweating in my hand. Laptop closed, phone on airplane mode. The sun dipped low, golden hour, perfect lighting. Not for selfies, for stillness, not revenge, peace. I didn't toast, I didn't cheer, I just breathed. Because the silence I left behind had finally spoken, and it told the truth louder than I ever could. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.